BIDSTITCH gang, we are out here in Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma, Washington. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Good people, good sellers, amazing true. And we're with the homie Isaiah from Blackstateco.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Tell us about how you got into true vintage. What was sort of, did you start with true? Were you into other spaces initially? Because I know a lot of folks prior to getting into true vintage kind of started out in streetwear and like the more basic graphic tee type stuff.
So what got me into true vintage was like archive designer fashion. So like Raf Simons, Rick Owens, or the other Japanese designers like Undercover and Number 9 and stuff. Because all those people that were the designers then been buying true vintage for years, since the 90s and early 2000s, to create all their seasons and all their designs. So I would gravitate towards certain pieces I like from them and then see it represented in the true vintage items. It was like, oh, I was basically already wearing like a full true vintage outfit, but it's being recreated from like, you know, these old things. So I was like, I'm just gonna start getting the originals.
That's super funny. I mean, you hear about sort of like these more archival interests that tend to reside more in like metropolitan, like larger cities, like let's say Los Angeles or New York or wherever else. Tacoma, I'm not giving it any grief, any shit.
Yeah.
But it's like a smaller town. Like, is that how did that initial interest in some of those more archival goods start out?
I guess being like starting in my interest in like sneakers and clothing in general, like the people I met that were also into like one thing showed me the interest of the archival designer fashion or what they're wearing. And I was curious about different pieces they'd wear and ask questions and get into it. Then I'd dive deep into the whole like scene of people in New York and LA that were wearing all these different things or posting these different brands. And I don't know, it's kind of like indirectly they were teaching me it without knowing.
That's cool. So like you first got into it. Now, did you get into it just for the sake of like you styling or you buying the shit for yourself? Or did you initially go into it being like, wait, I can make money here?
It was at first just buying stuff for myself. Like I was just buying stuff to wear, to look cool, stuff that I thought was cool. And then I started getting it from like overseas for a cheaper price. And then I was already selling like streetwear and different things like that or sneakers. So when I found I could get it for cheap there, I just started flipping it like on Grailed.
When you say get it for cheap there, are you talking like the true or are you talking the more
I'm talking
archival?
about the more archive stuff.
Got
yeah.
it. And then was it a pretty natural progression for you reselling true vintage, or did it once again kind of start with you just like wearing it, liking it, and holding on to it? Or were you initially off the bat being like, oh, I can make money selling true?
Well, I got into thrifting after like buying all this stuff online because I started finding vintage pieces thrifting. At first, I wouldn't go to the thrift at all. Like my mom and parents would go and I'd just sit in the car or go to the swap meet and I wouldn't want to go. And then I finally went in and found like some old Nikes and like an old jacket. And I was like, oh, I can actually find stuff. Then I started selling just the regular stuff first, like the tees and like the Tommy and the Polo and the Nike and stuff like that. And then after getting to the bins, seeing what other people were grabbing or just finding different garments and seeing like the resemblances of the old stuff or of the archive stuff I was in, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I'm finding it indirectly, but not really finding it.
No, it's a cool kind of perspective at looking at it like that. Like I know in the last few years, I'd say like the last 2 or so, there's been a massive explosion, not only in interest, but in resellers trying to tap into that true vintage market. What are your thoughts there?
I feel like if you're doing it just for the money, I mean, you can do it, but I don't feel like you'll be able to understand it fully if you don't appreciate the garment or the design and, I don't know, the small details of it. Because I'm not into it just for the money because I like the true vintage stuff just as much as I like the 90s or the Y2K stuff. Like I'll get excited about a Y2K piece just as much as I'll get excited about like an expensive true vintage piece just because of the design of the piece in general. So it's not necessarily for the money. It's more so like what a piece brings in the story a piece has to tell.
Do you think that true vintage is here to stay, or do you think it's more on the trendy side of things right now?
It's definitely here to stay because it's always been there. It just hasn't been exposed or like, fed to the public as much as it is because it's always been a thing within niche crowds or like I said, within the designer community because that's what they use to reference all their stuff. So there's always been a market and I feel like there's going to continue to be for it.
As that market grows, has your clientele shifted at all? I'm curious how much, in terms of a percentage, how much of your initial percentage when starting out was international versus domestic, and has it shifted in the last like 6 months or so?
Definitely within the last year, it definitely shifted more.
Okay, tell us.
Well, I guess just me popping up to like all these big events, like whether it be like a Rendezvous or Inspiration, the international customers can see what I have to bring and like how I don't know how good my stuff is, where they want it every time, where I have people messaging me trying to meet up early before the show or buy stuff early and things like that. So it just goes to show that people appreciate it more, or respect me more for what I'm selling because they want my product.
I like how you kind of said respecting you as well, because at the end of the day, like people have to buy from you. I mean, they're not just buying the product; they have to speak to you, they have to interact with you, whether it's through social or at an event. What do you say? What do you think about kind of you kind of becoming your own brand? Is it intertwined with the clothing that you sell, or would you like to kind of distinguish yourself as something almost apart from it, but also like
I like to intertwine it because I feel like my curation and what I put together is my form of art, or like what I put out. It's not necessarily like a painting or a drawing, but the pieces I put together to make like my page what it is like my form of art. So I want it to be connected to me because it's my taste at the end of the day, and people are like paying for my taste and paying for what I put together.
yeah, I like the curation. I like the style that you have your page in, and I think, I mean, some people I'm sure might say otherwise, but like it looks like you're probably one of the largest like true vintage resellers, at least in terms of prominence on social media.
Yeah.
And what do you kind of credit that to?
I could, like I said, to my personal taste because
Yeah,
I've never paid for like a promotion or done any ads or paid for followers or anything like that. Like everyone that follows me is like strictly natural just off of me posting things I like.
yeah,
So it goes to show like if you posting what you like and do the same thing, because I've done the same thing for the past like 2 years or so to get me as big as I am. I'm still gradually growing. It hasn't really been a shift, and I feel like I got it down pretty simple by like posting 1 to 2 pieces a day that I find is cool, and then doing a story sale every other week, and it continues to grow.
do you are you having more and more difficulty sourcing items, or has it become increasingly easier for you as your page has grown?
It's honestly been, I mean, I feel like it's been easier because my knowledge has I don't know, expanded, and I've built more clientele. So I guess there's more times where, I'm buying basically like to fulfill an order because I have stuff that I already know is sold once I get it, or people that are looking for a specific thing from me. So it's a bit easier. I can buy more things for different, I don't know, different areas. It's not just for my page or just for like an event. I have a store in Seattle that I sell true vintage at, then a store in Portland where I sell like 90s and Y2K stuff. So just finding all my outlets to sell.
Okay, this is a question, but if at one moment you're like, dude, like I don't know about this question, but this is something I've observed, right? I went to Durango. I saw you at Durango. Most of the kids there are like, I'd say 99% of the kids there are white kids. What does it mean for you? Or does it mean anything to you being someone that looks different than 99% of the people that are selling at, these events or just selling within this space?
Yeah, it's definitely a good feeling for me because like I'm one of the very few black people that do it. Even with true vintage, probably one of the only. And I haven't seen as many people, I say, get, I don't know, the success or like the praise that I've had within the space.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a good feeling. I feel like, I'm kind of infiltrating the area that maybe necessarily wasn't for me, but I'm kind of making it my own thing.
And you're
Definitely,
killing it.
yeah, definitely with I mean, a lot of the older people in the game too. There's not really many, so
No,
it's
that's
cool.
that's super cool. I mean, like I said, when I was in Durango, I mean, I'm Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And even for me, it's like a little bit interesting, like being in those types of spaces.
Yeah,
So
for
I had
sure.
to ask you. I was like, I wonder what it feels like.
Yeah, I
on
mean,
you.
it doesn't feel any different, but I feel like for me, it's like I don't know, it's kind of cool because I don't get treated any different majority of the time, and people respect me
Yeah.
because they know my knowledge and what I have to bring.
Do you do any bando picking?
I have. It's not like something I prioritize, but I definitely have in the past.
When you say it's not something you prioritize, so like when it comes to sourcing, is it mostly people that are just like in your DM saying, "Hey, I have this. Like, would you want to buy it?" And then you're
No,
selling it?
that rarely
Oh, really?
happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that like I have appointments with that I buy from monthly, or I do a lot of sourcing online as well, and then a lot of sourcing in person, whether it be like flea markets or going down to LA buying at the markets. So it's a little bit of everything.
Now, I'm kind of curious when you're looking at your future as a seller, especially as a seller within True. Are you hoping to eventually make the jump into something like more established, like a brick and mortar? Or are you totally cool doing what you're doing with the showroom?
I like what I'm doing with the showroom. I mean, maybe like opening a showroom like in a different location or something like that. But I like the showroom aspect because it's more so on my time. I don't have to have like a big rent where I have to be open every day and hoping customers come in. It's like every appointment that I book, I know people are coming to spend, and it's going to be like a for sure thing rather than just waiting to see day by day. So it works better for me like this, and I have more time to source. And I also feel like if I had to store it, it'd be hard for like me to find someone that'll run it exactly how I want to run
Sure.
it every single day.
Yeah. I've noticed something interesting within True Vintage, which is like almost like niche micro influencers kind of like popping up on TikTok and IG, showing different sort of different perspective and views into like the life of someone within True Vintage.
Oh, really?
And I'm not saying anything. I don't know whether it's a good thing, bad thing. I don't really care. I'm curious what your thoughts are on people, I guess, showing that much of this space that you're in.
I feel like if people find something that works for them, they can do it. But for me, it's something that for me, I kind of like to hold it sacred because it's something that I've taken a lot of time to gain knowledge and gain taste, and I've built my customers for people to come to me for it. So I feel like I'm not just trying to give it out because I've built something up and I've taken time and years. It's not like it just came easy or came overnight. Like I put in work and years to gain the knowledge to be able to do what I do. So I personally don't want to just give it out as much.
No, I think that's a super fair perspective. I mean, obviously you've been doing this for years. You know shit that, like, why would you give up, you know, a secret or whatever it is to someone that's been doing this for a few months when you kind of had to put the time in, the work in, the energy, probably the money in. I don't know how many times you had to go through trial and error to get to the stage that you're at now when it comes to your knowledge of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like if it's close friends or people I'm close with, I love to give them knowledge or put them on things because like that's a closer relationship. But yeah, I definitely like to hold it sacred for myself.
Could you talk to me about, you know, I think one thing in particular that's kind of gotten to the more general public when looking at True Vintage is these fucking videos of events like Rendevu, where you've got like 100 largely like international people just storming into a booth or whatever, into your booth.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me your thoughts on that, because that video went pretty crazy, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are when it comes to how ridiculous like people act to get some of the stuff that you have.
I mean, to me personally, it's fun. It's a good time because I'm sitting in the corner just like yelling out prices, pointing out prices, and then people are just handing me cash. It's like there's not really any thought to it, and I feel like it goes to show like how good my stuff is and what I'm bringing. Because if it wasn't that good or that serious, there wouldn't be people lined up. Like there's people that as soon as they got in went and stood at my booth. They didn't even worry about going to shop at the other booths. They were waiting for mine to open so they can get there first. So I mean, I can understand some people that are like regular shoppers and things, but that's the whole point of there being a preview day. You pay $100 the day before to get in early to get that first access, and they paid their $100, so they're gonna be ready. And if you don't want to deal with that, there's a day too for people to come and have a more peaceful shopping day where it's not as serious or as tense, but you're just gonna maybe miss out on some good things.
Something that just kind of connected to me was you mentioned your starting out in this world was your enthusiasm over like collecting archival garments. I'm sure a lot of these guys were Japanese designers. Now you've got Japanese buyers dying to get your stuff.
Yeah.
It's like a weird full circle type of moment. And I'm curious if you're like aware of it. And
I definitely am. And it's really cool because like I also took Japanese in high school for a few years too. Yeah. So I know like I don't remember much, but I definitely remember a little bit. So everything's definitely comes full circle with, you know, being connected and so interested in Japan at such a young age, and then it all connecting where like that's a big clientele of mine. So it is really cool.
I mean, in the video, like the amount of vigor that some of these like Japanese guys had when trying to get some of this shit. Was there one piece in particular at Rendevu that everyone was trying to get? Because I know that people were just like kind of throwing their hands over, but was there one thing in particular?
It was the Souvenir Rack that really did it because I had 38 souvenir jackets, and I mean it's a bit hard to find one.
Yeah.
So to get like 38 is like it's pretty substantial.
How long did it take for you to get 38?
4 months. So like after the last Rendevu, like I had had 15 the last Rendevu, and then I kind of wanted to outdo myself. So I was like, let's see what I can do from now until then, and I was able to collect 38. But I also sold probably like, 8 to 10 in between that were like a bit more basic ones. So I could have had more than that, but I don't know, got to keep stuff in rotation and keep my buyers happy.
Yeah, okay, keeping your buyers happy. That's interesting you say that. I'm thinking, I've spoke to a couple people from Rendevu, and a couple folks killed it. Like, are you able to give us a glimpse, ballpark, into what your sales were at one event, like Rendevu?
I mean, I could, but that's why I like to keep sacred with
That's
me.
fair.
Like, it was a happy number. I mean, people can see like how much stuff I brought and what I sold. I mean, if I took 38 souvenirs and sold 34, and then I sold like 3 other racks full of stuff, you could kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just think about it.
Do the math yourself. Okay?
Yeah, just think about it.
What's the future for Black State?
Like I said, probably maybe a showroom in a different location, more traveling, showing up at more events, and then trying to gain like more design clients or opportunities to maybe like put my clothes in like music videos or movies and things like that, because I do collect like really cool pieces that I like to showcase in different spaces eventually.
Are you seeing more mainstream interest with regards to buyers when kind of looking at your shop? Like, are there more, I don't know, I guess it's your clientele changing is what I'm asking.
No, I feel like it was the same. I feel like I was always posting and trying to get just like regular buyers too, because that's the thing. I have a lot of regular customers on my page too. It's not just resellers, so I can post stuff, and then majority of the time, like if I make a main post, it'll sell within like an hour, because I try to post really cool stuff that I know my people will like. So that's how it usually goes for me. It's a lot of the time just normal everyday people, not just like either resellers or big clients.
This is another random thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about. You look at like a Kyle, for example, and you look at the social media following that he's built up, and I'm kind of curious if the same applies for you. He's able to charge Kyle prices, Golden State prices.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, is there a premium associated with buying from Black State?
Oh, for sure. For specific pieces, there definitely
Really?
is. Yeah, my friends will know. It's like, people be like, oh, that's a Black State piece. Or we'll just talk like, people find a certain, be like, oh, that's a Black State piece. Where that has the look or the wear, like for example, a good leather jacket, or there's specific things that like I can charge a price for, because I know people are going to pay it coming from me. So, and because I appreciate it, because I put my price on stuff. Even like Kyle, he'll tell me like I'm crazy with some of the prices I put on stuff, and he was like, but you still get it, because it's like I valued a piece a certain way. Like I felt like all these details make it worth this much. So if someone else can see that, then they can buy it.
You mentioned Kyle, and I think there's a couple other people that we're pretty close with, like within that space. Seth, obviously, now. There's a couple others, but I noticed, and tell me if I'm wrong here, you could totally just say London, like you're reaching right here. But there's like an older sort of generation of those true vintage collectors, and there's this younger generation that's growing like tremendously. Is there ever any tension between those two eras of collectors and resellers, or is it pretty cohesive?
I feel like it's like unspoken tension. Like there'll be tension sometimes, like people aren't going to directly say it, but within either their reactions or their conversations with you, or the interactions you have with them, like you'll definitely see people be a certain way and then like warm up over time. Because I feel like definitely with me and Kyle, people say different things. It's like, oh, either like we're charging too much or doing too much sometimes, or they get mad because we're aggressive, and that's just how it is. And then it eventually gets to the point where they have to respect us, because they see we're having all the same buyers as them. The people that are buying from them want to buy from us now, and there's not really much they can do besides go on with it.
When you say aggressive, are you talking mostly in regards to like the buying process? Because I know it's crazy.
The
out
buying,
there. Yeah.
It does get. I mean, people
Tell us
definitely
give us a little
aggressive.
bit of a story if you got one.
I don't know. Just like at Durango, it's just like it was just ridiculous. Like we'll all be hanging out, and then one out of nowhere, someone leaves. Like Kyle may go leave somewhere, and then he comes back with a sack into a pile. Or like during the auction one time, I said I was going to the bathroom, but I went to go buy from someone's trunk that pulled up. Then I pulled back up with a pile. I'm like, what the fuck? Where'd you get that? So I don't know. It's just funny.
Yeah.
How it does get aggressive, like to get to a piece, or who's gonna pay up, or like bidding up people online for a piece. So.
Yeah, I kind of like, I'm curious, when I see some like high numbers going up on bids or offers or whatever, I'm curious like how much of that is ego driven versus how much of that is like actual market value. I guess you could make the argument that like, what market value is whatever you pay for it.
Yeah.
But getting to that point, whatever that sale price eventually is, I'm curious how much is just like, I can't let this guy get it.
I guess it depends on the piece, like how good or how cool the piece is. But if it's like something that you get often or you know the market, there's no reason to pay more. Unless I feel like in the instance, like if you really like the piece yourself or you're gonna wear it, then that'll be the time you'll bid up and pay a bit more.
Any personals that you would not sell?
Personals that I would not sell.
Like, is there anything that you get and you're like, oh god, this is like not...
It's usually like the animal print pullovers, like the fuzzy Kodiak pullovers. Like there's one right there. It's not the animal print, but the one that has like the diamonds, like those fleece pullovers. I like those animal print ones. So that's one thing I like to collect. And then like old hunting jackets, like cropped fishing jackets, are one thing I like.
Why is that?
It has just cool pocketing, cool design. I just like to wear them.
Is there anything? You don't want to answer this one, but is there anything where you're collecting now because you're like, okay, I think in a year, 2 years, 3 years, like it's actually going to be something dope?
No, not really. I mean, I just collect like off stuff I want to curate. Like I wanted to do the Souvenir Rack, so I just held on to those, and then maybe I'll like find something else that I want to dive into and curate and I don't know, collect. So it all depends on feeling or like what feels cool in the moment or what I'm liking.
Rad. BIDSTITCH. We just spoke with one of, I'd say in the top 5 true vintage sellers in the United States currently in terms of prominence and renown. I appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. Anything you want to say to the BIDSTITCH fanboys out there?
Keep fanning out.
We're out.